Morning, ladies. So I am just getting on here to do the contour training video. This is just how I do it. I am not a makeup professional. I have not gone to school. So there's the disclaimer. Don't at me over whether or not you think I'm doing it right. So I'm just going to go in with a little bit of our VFX primer. And I use the silver one because I'm not really down for the glowy look. That's not my favorite thing for my skin personally. So I use the Camera Ready and not the strobe. So now I'm just going to go in with my brush and get that all blended out. I usually use my fingers, but now that I have discovered what it feels like and how much farther it goes if I use a brush, honestly, it's not terrible. I like it better. I really do like it better, and I feel like my face doesn't get as aggravated because I'm not using my fingers and I'm using the softer brush. So now that I've got my primer on, I'm going to go in with a mixture of two of my Stay Mattes. I mix 2 and I mix 3 as kind of that halfway balance between my winter shade and my summer shade. So I just do a small squirt of 2 on the back of my hand and a small squirt of 3 on the back of my hand. So 2 and 3. And now I'm just going to blend it together with, you know what, let's make it a little bit bigger. Blend that together with my brush. Okay. Kind of dab that all over. And then I'll blend it out. Just make sure I'm going to get coverage before I start blending it out everywhere. I feel like using a brush to apply your foundation first gives it a smoother look, which will assist in a contour because you want to have a smooth base to contour. Because if your foundation's not right, your contour won't look right. And of course, her alarm's going off in the background. It'll shut off. Okay. Drop that down to a smaller brush. Put it down to give it more control. Okay. So now that I've got the brush and the foundation and I've hit it with a brush, I am going to go back over it with a blending sponge just to pat it into my skin. The brush gives you the coverage, but I feel like the sponge gives you the smoothness, if that makes sense. Now, I did wet this beforehand, but I'm just using it to push the foundation into my skin over top of that primer. So, you can see I'm just literally just pushing the foundation into my skin. See how it just kind of gives it a more flawless, smooth finish? So now I'm going to go in with my concealer and I'm going to put it in a triangle under my eyes. And I try and make sure that I've got pretty much an even amount of concealer under both eyes, just because it's important to have it match. And now put some concealer through here. Okay. And that is our full coverage liquid concealer that I'm using. So now I'm actually going to go in with a different sponge. It's a smaller sponge. I just feel like it's a whole lot easier. It's smaller and easier to get a targeted, cushioned blending versus trying to use a facial sponge, like the bigger sponge like this. I feel like the smaller sponges definitely have a time and place. So now I'm just blending that out. See how it just, by using a cushioned sponge versus your finger, you see how it just makes it very smooth, like it just makes it a lot smoother. And I'm going to go over here and I'm going to do this side. And if your sponge is wet when you're using it, you don't have to worry about it picking up as much product. I know that that's a concern that a lot of people have when using sponges, is that it's going to pick up the product, and then what are you left with? Like, it's going to be wasteful. If your sponge is wet beforehand, you don't really have to worry about it picking up a lot of your product. And you can see I'm just dabbing. I'm not spreading it. I'm not looking for the streaky. I'm just patting it into my skin. So I've got the concealer on as a highlight. And now I'm going to go in with the contour. And this is what everybody was waiting on. But if you don't have a good base, then your contour isn't going to look right. So I had to get that done first, and I wanted to show you how I did it. Right, sorry about that. I had to go shut her alarm off. It was not shutting off on its own. Okay, so this is the cream contour stick from Farmasi. The difference between cream and powder contour is really just a matter of preference. I prefer cream because of how it blends out and blends into my skin. So there are different ways that you can do this depending on your face shape. Where I have a wider face and I want to hide kind of those extra pounds. And so I go from the top of my ear. That's a good base for everybody. That's a good base for everybody. Is to go from the top of your ear. Don't bring it all the way down. Okay? Go from the top of your ear and just kind of follow. Like if you press in, you can feel your cheekbones. You just kind of follow that natural line and go about halfway down your face. And try and make it even. And just feeling those cheekbones. And just following the line there. So that's where we'll start. You can either do a thick line or you can do a thin line. I recommend doing a thin line first. You can go about halfway. Contour is all about creating the illusion of shadows. And it doesn't have to match perfectly. You know, you always hear it with your eyebrows, you know, sisters not twins. Yeah, it's kind of the same with contour. Once you blend it out, it's really not going to make that much of a difference. So I've got about halfway in and about halfway in. And now I'm going to go in on my nose. I have a very wide Mexican nose, okay? I can thank my dad for that. My nose is exceptionally wide. So what I do is I've already got, I don't know if you can see, but I've already kind of got it mapped out with the concealer that I put on. So now I'm just going to trace outside of that with the side. That's what gives me the, instead of using it flat, I'm using the side, and that's what gives me the thinner. You can also go up, and if you want to just kind of blend your forehead, you can. I feel like my forehead is very noticeable, so I like to kind of blend that up into the hairline. So this is what it looks like just before blending. It's from the top of the ear about halfway down, a thin line on the base of my nose. I don't do anything on the tip of my nose. I just do straight, and then I do up here. And now I'm going to go in, and I'm going to take my sponge. You can use a brush for this, like I did with the foundation. You can hit it with the brush first, and then you can go back in and just kind of pat everything down with your sponge. But I am going to just use my sponge right off the bat and press this in. And then I'll show you what I do after. So I'm just kind of pressing it in now. And yes, that is super harsh. I'm not going to leave it that way. I'm just blending it in for now. Just pushing it into the skin. Just to make sure that the color isn't going to lift when I do anything else. By pushing it into the skin, you're making sure that the contour color you just deposited isn't going to go anywhere. So just same on this end. I'm just pressing it into the skin. And I'm making sure that the point that I'm using is going down. So I'm not pulling any of my contour into the highlight. And undoing all of that work I just did. So I'm just pushing. And I am using a firmer sponge versus a softer sponge. I don't really like the super soft ones. So, okay. And you can see it's just a good base for my nose. Trust me, I'm going to blend all that together. Probably going to watch this and be like, what kind of ratchet advice is she giving us? I promise there's a plan. Stick with me. So I'm just pushing this in to the skin. I'm blending it up into the hairline. You don't blend down, you blend up. I also just hit my cat ears. Okay, those didn't go flying. So push, 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 push. Okay. So I've got the base down, and you see I just kind of pushed it into my skin. Now, I have leftover foundation on this brush that I used to get everything down in the first place. So now I'm just going to take it, and I'm going to rub circular motions, and I'm going to rub up. I'm going to blend up. Because you're wanting to highlight, like you're wanting to highlight your cheekbones. So you want to make sure that the contour blends up. So when you put the highlight on, it's going to be that accentuation of up here and kind of hiding down here. If you blend it down, it's the whole shadow thing. If you blend it down, it tends not to be as noticeable, or it can have the opposite effect and make your face look wider. Or, well, for lack of a better term, fatter. So, okay, you can see how when I took my brush to it and blended up, it just took the harshness right out of it. So now it looks like a natural shadow versus, you know, a botched contour job. So just up and down. And I'm using the brush. I used the sponge to pack the color. Now I'm using the brush to blend the two of those together. Okay, I can't use my left hand. And now I'm using the brush to just take out the harshness and blend the two together. And because I used the sponge to pack the color in, my brush didn't lift any of that up. So I'm just smoothing the transition. That's what the brush does. The brush just smooths the transition. And see how it's very natural now. And it looks like natural shadows, and that's what contour should be. It should look like natural shadows and not excessive. I don't do any contour down here trying to hide that chin or anything like that. I just, yeah, no. That's just who I am. That's just my face. We're just gonna have to deal. So I'll go ahead and put some blush on and highlight on before I do the rest of my face, so I can show you what that looks like and how to kind of make that work with your contour. So I'm going to use my brush, and I'm actually going to pick up the Sugar Pink today. So this is the Sugar Pink from Farmasi, and it's really, really powdery. So don't scrape it like you're used to doing with some. Just kind of pat it in. Because I tell you what, you scrape it, blush is going to go flying everywhere. So yeah, pro tip, don't do that. So when you're applying blush, you want to tap the majority of your color onto the apples of your cheeks. Okay. So I'm just tapping that on to my cheek, picking up a little bit more, and tapping it on to the apples of my cheeks. And our blush has a little bit of a shimmer to it. So it kind of acts like a blush and highlighter. So like a blush lighter. Now, okay. So that looks really, really heavy, right? Bear with me. Get a fluffier brush. I've got this really neat 3-in-1. So not everybody's going to have that. But you want a fluffier one, because now you're just going to pull it back. And you don't want, see, you want the fluffier brush because you don't want it to be too heavy-handed. And when you have a tighter packed brush, you get more of a color deposit. So now I'm just taking it, and I'm taking the color that I deposited on my cheeks, and I'm following the line of the contour, and I'm brushing it up. I'm not depositing any more color. I'm just taking the color that I already put down and blending it up. And I've got it set on the lightest, fluffiest brush option. So I'm not, like I said, when you're doing blush, you don't want it to be tightly packed. Like, you don't want to use a really firm, tightly packed blush or brush. And then you just pretty much, you're just eyeballing it from here, and you're making sure it's completely blended into your face. So I've got it blended up, and now I'm just kind of tapping the color where I put it on my cheeks with my fluffier brush, because where it's not as densely packed now, where I changed the setting on it, now I can use it for blending versus packing. So get that blended up. And that's how you apply blush. And you always want to go for a shade that's closest to your skin tone, and just depending on if you have warm tones or cool tones, whether you want to go for a pinky or a peachy color. But this, I feel, is a good complement to my skin tone. So I've got that on, and now I'm going to go ahead and do the highlight. So I am going to use our 3-in-1 palette for the highlight. And I'm actually going to, use a small brush and drop it. A small sponge for applying my highlight. It is damp. It's not wet. It is slightly damp. I got it wet about 30 minutes ago, so it could be just the right level of dampness before doing this. So let me show you why. I'm going to take a slightly damp sponge, and I'm just going to rub it lightly back and forth in the highlight. Okay? Because now I can get that precision control of where I want the highlight to go, and I'm not going to get a whole lot of fallout. So I like, when doing highlight, go from the tip of your brow, and it is just a gentle curve down, not like all the way. Don't highlight under your eye. Just go about halfway. And you can see it's kind of gonna go back in, lightly rub it about halfway to the corner of your brow and down. And now sorry, I'm gonna use what's left on my brush, on my sponge, and I can't get that right for nothing, can I? And I'm just gonna go over where I did the concealer highlight before, and highlighting that Cupid's bow. This is why highlight is typically done at the end, because you already have your brows done, you have your eye makeup on, you have your lipstick on and everything, and now you're just kind of highlighting it and contour and highlight, and just kind of finishing touches. So now I'm going to take, that's my confusion. Okay. So I'm going to take my cheek brush, and should I put it on mid? No, let's put it on max. Let's make it a little denser. Okay, so now I'm just going to take my brush, and where contour you want to blend up, highlight I feel works best if you blend down, because you're just kind of blending everything together to make it very cohesive. If you blend it up too far and like under your eye, I don't know, I feel like it throws your face out of balance. So I'm just blending what I packed on with my sponge with my brush, and I'm blending it down. I have a tightly packed brush this time, so that I'm not just flinging highlighter everywhere. So I'm just kind of blending this out. I packed it on, and now I'm using the brush to blend it out. So right now it probably looks a little bit weird because I don't have the rest of my stuff done. But if you feel like the highlight is too excessive, something you can do, I'll go ahead and share that little trick with you. If you feel like your highlight is too excessive and you don't want to like wipe it off and undo everything you just did, take some transparent powder, get some on your sponge, and just tap over it. Which you want to typically bake your concealer and everything anyway, and if you wanted to bake versus tone down your highlight, you would have done this before the highlight, but it's the same thing. It's literally the same thing as baking. You're just putting it over your highlight to tone it down. So, and that's why you use a transparent powder, because you can just kind of brush that off versus not. So now I'm just going to brush it off. And you can see how using the transparent powder, I didn't really deposit too much color. I just toned down that highlight to make it a little more natural looking. I forgot the end of my nose, apparently. There we go. Just have that. So see, if you feel like the highlight is a little too excessive, that's something that you can do. You don't have to completely wipe everything off and start over. Transparent powder is really, really good for kind of correcting, oh, I used a little too much blush. Oh, I used a little too much contour. Oh, I used a little too much highlight. Transparent powder is a really good fix for that because it doesn't deposit additional color, and it can kind of help just take the harshness out of an accidental, kind of oopsie that you got. So right now, my face is super smooth. I've got the foundation, or the primer, the foundation, contour, blush, highlight. And now, apart from not having anything else done, like my brows or my eyes or my lips, my face is done. Like, I've got the entire beat done. So, if you want to see how I do my brows, or how I apply my eyeshadow, or how I do my lips, then that's a separate tutorial. But for now, I hope this was enlightening. I hope you got some good information out of this. And you can put a comment below if there's anything that you have questions about, or a different face shape you want me to look into for you. So, I love you guys, and I hope this helps. Bye.